Hey folks, this is AJ, and in this video is going to start the first of a series of videos to teach you how to use Davinci Resolve 16. Hey folks, AJ the CEO here. This is your first time stopping by the channel. Thanks for stopping by, and on this channel we focus on tips, training, strategies, reviews, and builds to help modernize your media ministry. So if you're new here, consider subscribing. And if you like what we're doing here, consider becoming a patron at patreon.com. The link is in the description. This is the long requested kind of 101 with Davinci Resolve. Now, before I even get started, I will let you know that I am not a professional. I'm not professionally trained with Davinci Resolve. I'm just going to show you what I've learned and how I use Davinci Resolve to make videos for my business, videos for YouTube, and videos for church. So I've been using it for 3.5 years, and I don't have anybody who's complained about what I'm doing, as well as Davinci Resolve is what I use to make this video, as well as any other videos that I do for my church. So I just want to share with you exactly how I learned it, and hopefully that can speed up your process of learning it. So let's go ahead and cut over to the computer. So as of this recording of July 4th, 2020, Davinci Resolve 16 is at version 16.2.3. That is what I'm going to be using. And before I even go any further than that, also, I am not going over the specs on what type of computer you can have that you need to run Davinci Resolve. You can find all of that information on Blackmagic's site of configurations and everything like that of what you need to run the software. You can look under the manual there and it'll tell you what you need. I'm assuming that your system is able to run this. So we're just going to go from there and just go from the basics. All right. So I have Davinci Resolve open right here. Now let's just walk through the very first part. Compared to like Microsoft Word, Davinci Resolve uses a database system to save all of your projects. So as you can see, I have a bunch of databases here. You can actually do this as a database that's saved in a file, or you can actually use a database to save all of your information. Now, my background was an ETL developer, so doing everything in a database, a SQL type database, works for me. Honestly, you're not going to notice the difference. Me personally, I would go with the SQL database. Very straightforward. So I have different databases for each one of my quote unquote businesses, and to keep everything organized, have my gaming channel, business, multiple businesses, my church, and what I do here, as well as another branch of AJhomes.com, stuff like that. Now, inside of these databases, you can make any type of layout that you want, but again, compared to Microsoft Word, it's not a one file. It's that one file is stored in one database. So you can have multiple projects inside of your database. So for example, here's my church. I have folders in here for services, different projects, pastor's office or pastor's desk, our announcements or the newsroom. And I normally had another database, but I guess I removed it. And making a database is really simple. You can just click on here to make a new database. And defaultly it does connect, but we're going to do create. You can do disk. Like I said, it just makes a massive file that has all of this stored inside of it. Or you can do post GRE SQL. You have to make sure you have installed that when you installed Davinci Resolve. That is an option that you have to check off. It's not defaultly installed. Give it a name. You can name it pretty much anything except for something that already existed. So if I tried to name this Antioch 3, it can't, because there's already a database by that name. So you need to have something unique. You could put a username and password on it if you wanted to secure it, but honestly, you don't need to do that. Like for example, I have other databases in here. I think it was Antioch 2 that still resided in the database, and give it a second. Because I didn't change the database, the password and username, I'm able to relink this database that's inside of the engine. All right, so you can make many versions of this if you want to. Now, based off of what was recommended through Blackmagic Design, there really is no limit to how much you put in the database, but they kind of recommend that you kind of change it, make a new database over time. So for my church, like, we make at least 140 videos a year. So one database is good for that. So I make a new database every year for that. Now, me personally, for my YouTube channel, which is AJ 2020, I make one every quarter because of how many videos I do. I do around like 100 to or more per quarter. So that's why I make more. Now, honestly, originally I went an entire year and it worked fine. Didn't have any issues. It's just now that my amount of videos are going up, I actually just start doing it every quarter. But that is up to you. All right, so what we're going to do is make a database, and then all of our training, all of our tutorials are going to be based off of that. So let's go to new database. I'm going to do create. I'm going to do a SQL database, and we're going to call this Davinci Resolve 101. And it won't let you do capitals. Maybe I'll spell it out. Davinci Resolve 101. All right, and let's go ahead and create that. All right, here's our new database. Now, like I said, inside the database, you can make multiple folders to keep everything sorted if you wanted to. So for example, I'll make a folder and call this examples. Do another one called lessons. I think that's enough for right now. All right. And then you can just click inside the folder to get into it, or you can click here to home to go back. And if you don't want to see all of this, you can just click here, and then it just shows only that one database that you're in. But you got to be careful with that, because sometimes if you're here, you won't know if you're in the right database or not. All right, so when I'm here, we're going to call this lesson 1. So we're going to do a new project. Lesson 1. Create. All right, let's go ahead and take a tour of the application. So let's go down here to our media tab here. And this is where you're going to start with everything. This is a way for you to organize your data, your videos, your assets, your sound, whatever that you're going to be editing inside of Davinci Resolve. Here you go. Now, this will pull from all the paths that you have set on your computer. If you have any specialized drives, you can set those up, and then it pulls from everything else. You have your bins, you have your just media pool that shows your clips, your metadata window, which will show you when you click on any of this stuff, what's inside of it. You also have your preview window, you have your meters, you can do your waveform, you have your capture. I don't have a capture device inside here, that's why that won't work. You have your audio, like we were already there. You have your clone tool, if you wanted to use that. And then you can expand this to go full screen. The full length of this and everything like that. Really straightforward. Now you also have your cut tool. This is something that came out with, I believe, version 16 that makes it faster to edit. Me personally, I don't do anything in here. I'm so used to edit. That's where I'm mainly gonna go over. But there are plenty of great people out there who talk about how to use the cut tool. But again, I'm not gonna be focusing on that in this. I'm focusing on how I actually use Davinci Resolve. All right. And that's under the edit window. This is where I predominantly do all of my editing for video in any way, shape, or form. This is a non-linear editor. You have your media pool here, so you can access all the files that you uploaded in media for your project. You have your effects that go from different type of things. You got your video transitions, audio, titles, generators, effects, open FX, effects, filters, audio effects. Now, again, I am using the free version. This is not the studio. So a lot of these features will not be available. Some of the features, excuse me, are not available unless you have the studio version. So just be aware of that. And it will let you know when you can't use it or not, because it will say pretty much that you can't, that you need this version. All right. Then you also have your edit index, will show every single edit that you have, like a rolling history that you can always undo if you wanted to. So you got your sound library. You have your, turn that off. Then you also have your mixer, which will give you your overall sound as well as sound for each clip that you have. Metadata is there again. You also have your inspector, which will give you different properties for the actual media that you're using. And here's the button to make it the full length of the screen or just a small window of it. All right, you also have Fusion, which is a 3D modeler, as well as it gives you a lot of effects. The best comparison is saying it's kind of like After Effects, but a little bit more powerful than that. I'm not gonna go over that. I rarely use this. I'm still kind of a novice in this area, but it does give you some great features that I'll show you in some later videos how I actually use. Now you have your color module where you can change the color hue and do a whole bunch of awesome things inside of your videos here. We will be going over this. Fairlight is an engine to where you can modify and heavily manipulate your sound. And then we have our deliver module where you render, pick the type of project that you're doing, and they have shortcuts for YouTube, Vimeo, and they also have audio, Final Cut, Premiere, and all this other stuff that you can output and render your file, or you can use custom to render exactly what you want, video only, audio only, a combination of both, and everything like that. Here's your render queue. So when you start rendering, you can render multiple projects at the same time and have them listed out on here. And then you start rendering, all right? So now let's go to our properties in here. And let's go to preferences. And now I'm gonna start walking you through exactly some settings you wanna do to get yourself running so it makes it a lot easier for you to start editing with. All right, so the first thing, let's move up here to memory and GPU. Like I've recommended, you need some form of GPU to run this. Personally, I would say maybe I wouldn't go anything lower than the NVIDIA 1050 or a Radeon RX 560. You can, if you're using the AMD APU, like the 2200G, 2400G, 3200G, 3400G, those graphics cards can work with this as well. Don't expect to do 4K video editing and stuff like that because it will be slow. I recommend you at least have 16 gigs of memory, whether it's Mac or Windows, because this will work on Mac, Windows, and Linux, which is awesome. I have 32 gigs of memory in this system, so I dedicate Resolve to 16 gigs of memory, and I dedicate Fusion, it says 8, I can actually drop that down to 6, so that's 22. I want to at least leave 8 gigabytes of memory for the operating system, so I don't have any issues with that, all right? So when it comes to your GPU configuration, mine is a RTX 2070, which is using CUDA cores. If you don't understand none of that stuff, just leave it at auto. It will pick the right one, the appropriate one for the graphics card that you have. All right, media storage. Now this is important. I actually did a couple of videos ago where I talked about installing an NVMe drive to speed up performance for my computer as well as for a cache. When it comes to your settings inside of here, the very first entry inside your media storage, which makes a quick access link to those folders that I showed you before, you put this in here, and and I have this pointing to my NVMe drive that is dedicated just for cache. That's what this drive is right here. And this is meant, and I need to clean this up, but this is meant solely for Davinci Resolve. And it is a fast drive, a 512 gigabyte drive. So I mounted this and pointed this in Davinci Resolve, but as it says right here, the very first media location listed above would be used as store for gallery and for cache files. That's the reason why I have this F drive pointed here. That is my cache, and we'll talk about that later. I also have a path to my current projects. It makes it really easy for me to get to, and my assets for my YouTube channel and my church. Makes it really easy to get to it instead of drilling down and having to go through the drive to do that. You can make as many of these as you want. All right. Decode options, you really don't need to touch. Video and audio, you really don't need to touch, as long as you keep this on a used system. So that way, if I plug my headphones in, it'll go to the headphones, or you could hard code it to whatever you want it if you went manual, but honestly, leave it at use system settings. Audio plugins, I'm not touching that. It's already configured with when I installed it, so that's good. Control panels, don't need to touch. General, that's up to you. Send automatic problem reports if you want to. Send a report for when application quits. I do that. I do not have opt-in for beta, automatic update checks. I have that checked off. And then the other two I keep off. Now, you can also link Davinci Resolve directly to YouTube and Vimeo, so after it finishes rendering your file, it will upload it directly to those platforms of choice. You can log in here to do that. So if I came in here, I would click sign in, and it will prompt me to log into my account to link and do all that stuff, and that is your choice. All right, advanced, really don't need to touch. Now that was on the system. Let's go over here to user. And a lot of this, you can change this any way you want to, and you'll probably want to change this over time as you get more comfortable with Davinci Resolve. The main thing I have is go to project, save and load. I check off live save, project backups, and I make a backup every 5 minutes. And I probably could bump this up to 7, but just know you need to check that off, because you'll have sometimes, you just never know. Sometimes the program might crash, your computer might crash, something, and then you put in all that work and then it's gone. So I do this with Word. I do this with every single program that has this type of feature. I always have it at like 5 to 7 minutes. I almost get it to the point where it's backing up to where it's almost annoying, but at least I have a rolling backup of the work that I'm doing. All right, so everything else, I changed the start code to all zeros. That's your choice. And a lot of these other things we don't really need to go over, don't really need to be adjusted. All right, so that's the whole lay of the land right there. All right, now before we go any further, we're back here on the media module. Let's click on this little gear all the way in the lower right-hand corner. And this is going to give us our project settings for this project. So inside of here right now, we look through it, and I'm not on presets, I'm on master settings right now. My default resolution is going to be at 1920 by 1080. And our timeline frame rate is 29.97. You can always change that, and I think I'm going to change that to 60. And playback frame rate, I want to match. Monitor, video monitoring, that's if you had something else like internal card that can go out. That's where you change those settings. So that's really not important unless you have it, but you would know what that is if you're using that. Optimize media resolution, choose automatically. We'll talk about that. That pretty much means if your computer can't handle 4K, you can downscale it inside the program so that it's workable. Even though my computer can handle 4K, sometimes I drop it down to 1080p just because I want it to work faster. That's up to you. You can change the media format for it to be optimized to. So it's pulling cache locations that we talked about before. What's the name of the path where it puts gallery stills there. And that part is fine. Now let's go to image scaling. I really don't touch this. Color management, I don't touch this. General options, I don't touch this either. And I mean, it's a lot of this stuff I really don't use. I mainly go here to these master settings here. So if you want to always do these settings like this, what you could do is now let's go to presets and let's save this. Are you sure you want to change this? Yes, I do. All right, so that's my current project. And I actually want to, yes, I think that's fine. All right, so let's go ahead and just upload some footage here. Here's some clips of me doing, I don't know what I was doing here. So you can highlight them and just drag them in. Boom. And that message, let me do, well, it's too late now, but pretty much if I come in here right now, that message was saying that the video that you're trying to import does not match the project. So as you can see right here, these are actually two 4K clips because of the resolution. If I click this little gear here and see our master settings, our timeline is at 1080p at 24. That's all it's saying. But I changed the project to match this. So we can always, it doesn't even matter about that. We can always change some other stuff here. So there's our stuff. So now let's go over here to edit. Just click on media pool. So now we can see these files and you can click on this button to make it take up full screen or not. And what we're gonna do is just click and drag this project onto our timeline. Now, if you don't like that, let's delete this again. You can come in here, hit Control N, or you can go to File and do New Timeline. That's where the Control N is. And now you have a lot more functions and features and options that you can do here. So you can give your timeline a name and just say example, you know, something like that. And if you wanted to make some different changes contrary to the native resolution, because again, the clips that I'm using are in 4K. Let's go to custom settings. And now we can change the format. I want to change this to 4K to match what my clip is. And you can change the frame rate, but I think this is fine. And there's a lot more features you can do, but mainly I'm changing the timeline resolution to 4K because that's the type of clips that I'm using. So now we create. And if you really want to see a timeline, you can click on this little button here. And we want to do tabs. So that way, if you have multiple projects, you can see them all right here. All right, so now let's drag this down here. As you can see, here is our clip. And we can click on this and scrub through it. The video here. On all that other cool, fun stuff. All right. Really straightforward. So I think that's probably enough for this lesson of just the lay of the land. And I think in the next video, we're going to be talking about how we're going to start editing, doing some simple edits with some footage that I'll provide in the next video. So be on the lookout for the next video. Make sure you have notifications on. That way you get notified when we come out with this. And before I close out, I want to thank all of our patrons that made this video possible. Here's a shout out to them. You can see their names on the screen. And if you like what we're doing, you can become a patron just like they did for as little as $1 a month, where you help us do better videos, get more equipment so that we can train media ministries all over the world. Again, thank you, patrons. Thank you so much for making this possible. So if you like this type of content, I appreciate a like, consider subscribing, and hit that bell. That way you get notified when we come out with other videos to help modernize your media ministry. This is AJ. We will see you on the next video. Later.